The fairy lights glowed, the champagne flowed, and then my mother announced her wedding gift, my home given to my brother. That's when I decided to burn the perfect evening to the ground. The fairy lights, strung across the old barn, flickered, casting a warm golden glow on the smiling faces of the guests. My brother, Kevin, was getting married, and everything was, on the surface, perfect. His bride, Jessica, looked radiant in a dress that probably cost more than my car, and the two of them hadn't stopped gazing at each other like they were the only two people in the universe. I'd organized most of it, of course. I was the responsible one, the planner, the one who made sure the caterers were paid and the DJ had the right playlist. I didn't mind. I loved my brother, and seeing him this happy was supposed to be its own reward. Our mother, beaming with pride, clinked a spoon against her champagne flute. The chatter died down as all eyes turned to her. She looked magnificent in a deep blue dress, her hair perfectly coiffed. "I just want to say a few words," she began, her voice thick with emotion. She went on about how proud she was of her son, the man he'd become, and how she couldn't have picked a better daughter-in-law than Jessica. It was all standard, sweet, mother-of-the-groom stuff. I smiled, feeling a genuine warmth spread through my chest. Then her tone shifted. She looked directly at Kevin, her eyes shining a little too brightly. "Kevin, my sweet boy," she said, her voice now projecting across the entire venue, "you know how much this family means to me, and a man needs a foundation, a place to build his own family, his own legacy." My stomach did a little flip. I had a bad feeling, a tiny cold dread that started in my gut and began to crawl up my spine. "Your father, God rest his soul, would have wanted this," she continued, her voice swelling with performative gravity. "So, as my wedding gift to you and my beautiful new daughter, Jessica, I want to announce that the family home is now yours." The words hung in the air, thick and suffocating. A polite, confused smattering of applause broke out. My ears started ringing. The family home? The house our father had built with his own two hands? The house he'd explicitly told us, on his deathbed, was for both of us to share, to always have a place to call home? The house that I had been paying the mortgage on for the last 3 years, while Kevin was off finding himself in Europe and Mom's pension couldn't quite cover it. I looked at Kevin. He wasn't surprised. He was beaming, a triumphant, smug grin spreading across his face as he pulled Jessica into a dramatic kiss. They knew. This was a planned ambush. My own mother, in front of 200 people, had just erased me from our family's history and handed my future to my brother on a silver platter. Every sacrifice I'd made, every weekend I'd spent fixing the leaky roof or tending the garden Dad had loved so much, it all amounted to nothing. I was just a placeholder. My vision tunneled. The happy faces, the twinkling lights, it all blurred into an indistinct mess of sound and color. The only thing I could see clearly was the DJ's table, just a few feet away. A spare microphone sat on a stand, gleaming under the lights. My mother was still talking, something about grandchildren and picket fences, but I couldn't hear her anymore. All I could hear was the frantic, furious pounding of my own heart. A cold, sharp clarity cut through the shock. Oh, no. She was not going to do this to me. He was not going to get away with this. I pushed my chair back, the sound of its legs scraping against the wooden floorboards, silencing the few people who were still clapping. And as my fingers wrapped around the cool metal of the microphone, I knew that this perfect, happy wedding was about to be completely and utterly ruined by me. The feedback screech from the microphone was a satisfying shriek that cut through the polite applause. Every head in the barn swiveled towards me. My mother's smile froze, cracking like a porcelain doll dropped on a stone floor. Kevin's face, which had been a mask of smug satisfaction, was rapidly darkening into a thundercloud. Jessica just looked confused, her perfectly painted lips parted in a small O. "Wow," I said, my voice surprisingly steady as it boomed through the speakers. "Just wow, Mom. What a performance." A real tear-jerker, I let the words hang there, dripping with a sarcasm so thick you could taste it. A house. What an incredibly generous gift. I took a step forward, a predator stalking onto a stage. I'm sure everyone here is touched, but I think there are a few key details that Mom, in her emotional state, seems to have forgotten to mention in her beautiful speech. I scanned the crowd of bewildered faces, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends, who had known me since I was in diapers. They were about to know me a whole lot better. "For starters," I said, locking eyes with my brother, "the family home that was just so generously gifted away. I'm the one who's been paying the mortgage on it for the last 3 years." A collective gasp rippled through the room. My mother went pale. That's right. Every single month, while Kevin was off finding himself in Bali and Mom's pension was, shall we say, insufficient, I was the one making sure we didn't go into foreclosure. While you were getting a tan, brother dear, I was fixing the boiler. While you were sending us postcards from Spain, I was sending the bank checks. That is enough, my mother hissed, her voice a harsh whisper that didn't quite reach the mic. "Oh, is it?" I shot back, turning to face her fully. "You thought this was the appropriate time and place to publicly disinherit me and make me homeless. So forgive me if I think this is the perfect time and place to air some of our family's dirty laundry." I turned back to the guests. "Our father, a man I know many of you loved, told Kevin and me on his deathbed that the house was for both of us. A safety net, a place we could always call home. He would be disgusted by this." Kevin was on his feet now, his face a furious shade of red. "Give me the microphone. You're drunk and you're ruining our wedding." He started moving towards me, but our uncle, a burly man who had always had a soft spot for me, put a hand on his chest, holding him back. "I'm not drunk, Kevin," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerously calm level. "I have never been more sober in my entire life. I'm just done. Done being the quiet, responsible daughter. Done being your personal bank. And I'm done letting you and Mom walk all over me." I looked from my brother's enraged face to my mother's terrified one. "You want me to just stand by and let you give away my home? My inheritance? The tens of thousands of dollars of my own money I've poured into that house?" I gave a short, bitter laugh. "No, I don't think so. In fact, I've already taken steps to protect my investment. You see, when you've put a substantial amount of your own money into maintaining someone else's asset, the law has a funny way of seeing things. It's called an equitable lien. The color drained completely from my mother's face. Kevin just stared, his mouth agape. They had no idea. They thought I was just the quiet girl who paid the bills. They had no idea I could fight back. "I had a lawyer draw it up last month," I announced, my voice echoing in the dead silence of the barn. "A legal claim against the property for every single dollar I've spent. It was filed with the county clerk last Tuesday." I paused, letting the weight of my words sink in. "So, congratulations, Kevin and Jessica. You're not just inheriting a house. You're inheriting a massive debt. A debt to me." The silence that followed was absolute. You could have heard a fairy light flicker out. Then came the whispers, a rustling wave of shock and scandal that washed over the manicured joy of the wedding reception. Jessica had gone utterly white, her face a mask of horrified confusion. She took a step back from Kevin, her eyes wide as she stared at me. "A debt?" she whispered, her voice too faint to carry, but her expression spoke volumes. Kevin finally broke free from our uncle's grip, his face contorted with rage. "You're a liar!" he roared, lunging toward the small stage I'd commandeered. "You're trying to ruin my life because you're jealous." "Jealous?" I laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that echoed through the barn. "Jealous of what, Kevin? Your stunning lack of financial responsibility? Your talent for taking everything and giving nothing? No, I'm not jealous. I'm just cashing out." My mother, seeing her perfect party implode, switched tactics. The proud matriarch vanished, replaced by a wilting victim. She began to sob, great, heaving, theatrical tears. "How could you do this?" she wailed, clutching at her heart. "To your own brother? On his wedding day? You're a monster after everything I've done for you." "Everything you've done for me?" I repeated, my voice dangerously low. I turned to address the guests again, my personal jury. "Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the rent I've been paying my own mother to live in what was supposed to be my house. Rent that, surprise, was the exact amount of the monthly mortgage payment she claimed she was handling. Let's talk about the 2 years I put off grad school to take a second job so we wouldn't lose Dad's legacy." I saw a flicker of doubt in the faces of my family. The story they'd been sold was falling apart. Jessica finally found her voice. She turned on Kevin, her voice shaking with fury. "You told me the house was paid off. You and your mother told me it was your inheritance, a gift to start our lives." "It is." "She's lying to you, honey. She's twisting things." Kevin sputtered, but his eyes couldn't meet hers. He knew he was caught. "Oh, am I twisting things?" I said, pulling my small clutch purse from the table beside me. I took out my phone, my fingers flying across the screen. "Because I find that documentation is a wonderful untwister." I held the phone up, its screen glowing in the dim light. "I have a folder. It has a very simple name: Proof. In it are the scanned copies of every check I wrote to the bank, every receipt for every repair, the property tax bills I paid online, the email thread where Mom begged me to cover the mortgage, just for a few months 3 years ago. It's all here, meticulously organized. I've already sent a copy to my lawyer, but I'd be happy to share it with anyone else who's interested. Mr. and Mrs. Peterson? I asked, nodding towards Jessica's horrified parents. Would you like to see the foundation your daughter's new life is being built on? A wave of nausea rolled over my mother's face. Kevin looked like a cornered animal. They thought this was my last card. They thought it was just about the money. They were so wrong. I let the silence stretch for a moment, enjoying the panic in their eyes. Then I leaned into the microphone, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper that every single person in that room strained to hear. But you know, the lien, the receipts, that's just the financial part. That's just about getting my money back. I looked directly at my mother. What you two seem to have conveniently forgotten is what Dad kept locked in the old safe in his study. The one only he and I knew the combination to. The one that holds his actual, notarized final will and testament. My mother's manufactured sobs choked in her throat. Kevin froze, his rage momentarily eclipsed by pure, unadulterated shock. The safe. They had forgotten about the safe. In all their plotting and scheming, they had overlooked the one place my meticulous, old-fashioned father would have secured his final wishes. They had been relying on the will Mom had presented after he passed, a flimsy, suspiciously simple document that left everything to her, to be distributed as she saw fit. That's just his old papers, Mom stammered, her voice thin and reedy. Business things. You're making it up. Am I? I asked, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Dad changed his will 6 months before he died, after his diagnosis. He knew his health was failing, and I think on some level he knew you both. He had it drawn up with Mr. Abernathy, his lawyer. He gave me the new combination to the safe and told me to open it only if I felt things weren't being handled fairly. I'd say today qualifies, wouldn't you? Jessica's father, a stern-looking man in a tailored suit, was on his feet. "Is this true?" he demanded, his voice cutting through the hushed chaos. He wasn't looking at me. He was glaring at Kevin and my mother. I didn't need to answer. The sheer panic on their faces was confirmation enough. I clicked my phone again. I took the liberty of visiting the safe this morning, just before coming to the wedding. I had a feeling something like this might happen. I took a photo. I turned the phone's screen towards the room. There, illuminated for everyone to see, was a crisp, clear image of the official document. The heading was unmistakable. Last Will and Testament of Robert Miller. And below it, clear as day, was the signature of my father and his lawyer. "Mr. Abernathy is expecting my call," I announced calmly. "The will is quite specific. The house is to be held in a trust, with me as the executor. I am to have primary residence as long as I wish, and Kevin is welcome to live there only with my permission. The house is to be sold only if both of us agree, with the proceeds split 50-50. As for Mom," I said, turning my gaze to her, "Dad left her his pension and a life insurance policy, which I know for a fact was more than enough for her to live comfortably. He didn't want her to be a burden on either of us. Funny how that worked out." The fallout was immediate and spectacular. Jessica ripped the veil from her hair, threw her bouquet at Kevin's chest, and stormed out of the barn, her parents trailing after her, shooting daggers at my brother. The wedding was over. Guests began to leave in a flood of awkward goodbyes and sympathetic glances in my direction. In less than 10 minutes, the barn was half empty, the fairy lights now illuminating a scene of total devastation. Kevin just stood there, a groom with no bride, a king with no castle. All the smugness had drained out of him, leaving him looking small and pathetic. My mother had sunk into a chair, her face buried in her hands. The party was over. Their grand deception had crumbled to dust. I placed the microphone back on its stand, the soft click echoing in the cavernous space. I walked past them without a word. There was nothing left to say. As I stepped out into the cool night air, leaving the wreckage of my brother's wedding behind, I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel angry anymore. I just felt free. They had tried to take my home, my security, my father's legacy. But they had underestimated me. They had forgotten that I was my father's daughter, quiet, responsible, and always, always prepared. I had lost a brother and a mother tonight, but I had gained something far more valuable, my future, on my own terms. And as I got into my car and drove away, I knew I was finally going home.